Welcome back. Now, Democratic Alliance leader John Steenhuisen said that the disagreements over the proposed 2% increase in value-added tax were among the reasons for the postponement of yesterday's budget. This comes after Finance Minister Godongwana was set to deliver the speech, but disagreements within the Government of National Unity led to an unprecedented delay. Joining me now, I'd like to welcome DA spokesperson Willem Aucamp. Willie, thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus.
Good afternoon, Faraz. Always nice to be with you.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. All right. Willie, within Treasury, of course, you've got the Finance Minister, that's Ino Godongwana. You've got two Deputy Finance Ministers, Amos Masondo, and of course, somebody from the DA, Asho Sarupan. I want to ask, when it came to consultation, was there consultation prior to yesterday? And if there was consultation, how much of clarity was there, especially when it came to this discussion of value-added tax?
For us, yes, there were consultation. Obviously, as you just mentioned, Mr. Asho Sarupan from the Democratic Alliance is one of the Deputy Ministers of Finance. And via Mr. Sarupan, as well as via our people on Treasury, we have put forward several plans that would be an alternative to an increase in taxes. We saw yesterday that we would have received a 2% increase on VAT. Now, for us, there's just no way in which ordinary South Africans that are already battling to make ends meet every month would have been able to afford a 2% increase in VAT. And the Democratic Alliance made that clear from the start that we will not support a budget like that. But it's one thing to say that you will not support something. If you do that, you've also got the responsibility of proposing something that will work. And that is exactly what the Democratic Alliance did. We proposed a lot of cost-cutting measures. To explain to your viewers, it's as easy as that. If I in my household does not come out with my money, I've got to do one of two things. I must either lift my income by getting a second job or whatever, like government is doing now by increasing taxes, or I've got to cut my cost. I must go to Woolies less, or I must have dinner at a restaurant less. I must cut my cost. And that is exactly what the DA proposed here. Instead of burdening the taxpayer further with an increase in taxes, let's go and look at places where we as a government can save money. We saw over the last 30 years, Shiraz, that on so many instances, money was wasted. We saw billions and billions of rand that went wasted due to corruption, due to mismanagement, overlapping of departments that we can see where we clearly can save money. And that is what the Democratic Alliance, as well as Deputy Minister Asho Sarupan, put on the table for Treasury. And I believe that we will now, after what happened yesterday, we will be much clearer on that.
Okay. Willie, when it comes to this consultation, so there's 3 weeks left. How much of that is now going to hinge on this budget speech occurring on the 12th of March? I ask this because this is something that it's clear from the ANC, which is, of course, your GNU partner. They are quite clear that this is the way going forward. You, as the Democratic Alliance, say no. How does middle ground get found? Because when I read this leaked budget speech, it's quite clear that just reading what Minister Godongwana in the proposed speech he was supposed to give yesterday represents the most efficient and broad-based approach. Is that something that the DA is looking at and asking themselves, well, we can't really agree on this? Middle ground, how is that found?
Well, firstly, Juros, the ANC realized yesterday that they do not govern alone anymore. You cannot have a government of national unity, partners in a coalition government, but you carry on and act as if you still have got a sole majority. That is not how it's going to work. And the Democratic Alliance made it clear yesterday when we just said, Minister Godongwana, you can go on that stage and you can go and present this budget, but we will not support this budget. You've got to listen to us. We have seen for 30 years how ANC budgets was implemented. Parliament became a rubber stamp for what the Minister of Finance proposed, and it was a disaster. Our country is where we are due to absolute poor budgets in the past. now that the Democratic Alliance is part of this government of national unity, we will not let a poor budget get passed under our watch. And that is why we said yesterday, and previously, not only yesterday, I mean, the Minister of Finance knew full well that we will not support this. It wasn't only a thing of yesterday. But yesterday, when it came to the push and the minister had to literally walk into Parliament and present it, he might have thought that the Democratic Alliance will budge, but we did not. We said that we will not support this, and that is exactly what we've done. So now these negotiations got to take place. The Minister of Finance must now realize, and I think after yesterday he has, that he literally has now got to listen to his partners within the GNU, because we are putting sound principles on the table that can be a pro-growth budget and not a pro-tax budget. We heard that the Commissioner of SARS, Mr. Edward Kieswetter, also said that he is of the opinion that it is not necessary to increase taxes and place a bigger burden on the taxpayer, but that there can be, if there are more money put into SARS to enable them to properly collect taxes, we can get an additional 800 billion rand in. I mean, that is a lot of money. A 2% VAT increase would have made provision for around about 50 billion rands. The tax proposals and tax cuts that we've put on the table that can be done would easily make up for that. We've put a proposal on that would easily cut more than 25 billion, and if we are going to just enforce that and go and look a bit further, we can easily make up the money that the minister wanted to get in by that. It should not be like that.
Now, Wally, the DA and the ANC have not seen eye to eye on 3 bills that have already been passed by President Ramaphosa. That's, of course, land expropriation, Bella Bill, and, of course, NHI. If middle ground is not met on VAT, what does the DA do next in this GNU?
Shiraz, with regards to Bella, the NHI and the Expropriation Act, all three of them were passed in the previous government. In other words, in the previous parliament, before the elections, those bills were voted on in parliament, and then the president signed them afterwards. The ANC did not listen to the proposals that we've made on that, so there will be a road. For example, on the Expropriation Act, the DA has already filed our court papers, and we are going to test the constitutionality of that bill. But those bills were in the past. Now we've got a budget that we've got to vote on now. If Parliament has got to vote on this budget that the minister would have presented yesterday, I can promise you that this budget would not have passed, because we've got to vote on that now. They can't come and say, but yeah, we've done this in the previous Parliament. This is now on the table, and that is why they've got to listen to us. So it is now a matter of give and take, a matter of looking at alternatives and definitely not putting a higher burden on the already overburdened taxpayer of South Africa.
One final question. Whatever agreements comes between, obviously, the DA and the ANC, when it does get passed, when it does get mentioned, if Cabinet does agree on it, the DA, obviously, for the last few administrations, has been the one that has obviously been the more accountable. I'm trying to find the best word. The one that has, of course, been holding the governing party to account. Now you're, of course, part of this government of national unity. Is the DA prepared, should whatever budget is passed, be prepared to take the accountability on their part if things do not go right, should this budget not have a success to it in terms of long-term effects?
The Democratic Alliance will only support a budget that is workable. So the budget that will be passed will be something that we will support. Without our support, the budget cannot pass. So, and that is what I've said earlier on. So if that realization has kicked in and we get to a budget that will pass, it will mean that the Democratic Alliance has approved it. And obviously we will do everything in our power to get that budget through then and get it implemented. We have shown where we govern that we've got good budgets, that we've got pro-poor budgets. If you look at the Western Cape and specifically the city of Cape Town, what we are doing there and the amount of money that's going towards the poor and alleviating their struggles on a daily basis We are enacting that. We are fulfilling our promises. And that is exactly what we will do should this budget that will now be agreed upon be voted on and be agreed to by ourselves. If the Minister of Finance is not going to put a budget forward that we agree with, and is not going to put forward a pro-growth and pro-poor budget, but a pro-tax budget, we will not support it. And after yesterday, you know that full well. I don't think that the minister can afford to again go into Parliament and present a budget that he knows will not pass. We will have a budget on the 12th of March. I believe that will be negotiated between all the parties in the GNU, that will be supported by primarily the two major parties, the ANC and the DA, but also all the other parties within the GNU. This is a marriage of a different amount of parties coming together, and we've got to respect each other and listen to each other.
Willem Aucamp, thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's DA spokesperson Willem Aucamp. Now moving from a party of the Government of National Unity to a party that is sitting on the opposition benches. After the break, I chat with African Transformation Movement leader Vuyo Sungula. Do stay tuned.